One of the most difficult and certainly the most dangerous skill in orientation and mobility for the blind is crossing streets and intersections. The modern, light-controlled intersection has been designed to move a high volume of traffic in a safe and orderly manner. The intersection is part of a vast system, engineered, computerized, and controlled by specific software. The modern intersection is a compromise between the needs of pedestrian and motorist, man and machine, and in a way, it epitomizes our society. There are several stereotypes about the blind. They supposedly hear better than sighted people, and many people assume that blind travelers just know how to use canes. The fact is that the effective use of the sense of hearing, the location, identification, and discrimination of sounds, are skills taught by trained and credentialed mobility teachers over possibly a decade and a half. Orientation and mobility, the skill of using the long white cane for independent travel, may start in preschool for blind children and continue several times a week until they leave high school. Every aspect of cane travel is a specific part of a continuum, an integration of increasingly more difficult skills. The ability of blind people to cross an intersection is years in the making and dependent on sensory training, cane technique, and the gradual building of a lot of confidence in themselves. The student puts together a variety of cane techniques and complex sensory integration skills to feel the textures, the gradients, to listen to environmental sounds and determine their direction and range. He uses the cane to detect the drop-off of curbs, the subtle crown and banking of streets, all of this while maintaining a sense of relative position and direction. The Hollywood stop isn't confined just to California. Students learn to listen and interpret movement patterns and to expect the unexpected. One of the more difficult auditory skills is using the dead sound area of an object with sounds behind it. The student hears the position of the mailbox when it doesn't allow the car sound behind it to travel through it. The student uses the cane to experience a variety of textures: concrete, lawns, weeds, gravel, sand, asphalt, and a tremendous range of types of sidewalks and crossing configurations. Many of these crossings have stop signs, which result in sound cues to the speed and position of traffic. Contacted that mailbox right about. Here's right where the car was. Contacted the mailbox. Came down here. We had a cross sidewalk here. And here we had our pole, which was our signal to cross. Right before we crossed, we had a car make a turn down here. Do you remember that sound?
Right.
And it was hard to hear because we had all the cross traffic over here.
Right.
Plus we had the wind. And from here we made our crossing over here. You veered a little bit over here to the left. And then you straightened up a little bit and got your sidewalk over here. So we had a T crossing basically. And there's no roads. I mean, this is a sidewalk, there's no roads, there's nothing behind it. So, okay? Okay. Using long stretches of sidewalk in areas with little traffic, the student can work on maintaining a straight line of direction, crossing narrow streets, finding the curb, and reorienting to corner and sidewalk. Here, too, we often encounter broken sidewalks, the gravel, dirt, and weeds that are so often a feature of the side of the road. Here, we can isolate and perfect each component of the cane technique. Centering the cane and adjusting the width of the cane arc has to be a natural and automatic movement. The right amount of extension of the cane to afford protection goes hand in hand with the easy, relaxed rhythm of the cane technique while walking naturally. A good rate of speed is an important aid in maintaining a good line of direction. A difficult skill, and one which requires a long time to learn, is using the cane to take the cue from the edge of the sidewalk and making the necessary changes in direction instead of the sharp angle of an overcorrection. Learning to compensate for veering and learning to use the cane to read the gradual changes in slope of a street from the crown down to the curb are things that no sighted passerby will ever notice, but they're critical skills for the blind traveler. Walking along a street with a high traffic density requires a higher level of concentration. Loud and fast traffic that would seem to be a distraction has to become a sound cue for line of direction. At this point, the cane technique has to be internalized. The student is learning to process tremendous amounts of information while maintaining his orientation in space and his line of travel. Learning to approach cross-traffic sounds and learning to find the location and placement of corners requires more complex auditory skills, all the time while maintaining the cane technique and a sense of orientation to space and direction. Okay.
We have a red light ahead of us, so the next thing you're going to hear is the cross traffic going across like this. And there they go.
Drawing on the hand and the leg with a finger gives some indication of the relative position and direction of things in the vicinity. This tactile picture can give a great deal of information to the student very quickly, immediate feedback while actually engaged in the situation, using the hand or leg or even the back of a student as a palette to present the environment enables him to feel what he cannot see. On a clockwise crossing, the oncoming traffic paralleling him will shield him from cars on his left making right turns across the front of him, if he waits until the oncoming parallel traffic surge passes his right shoulder before starting his crossing. As he nears the opposite corner, drivers making right turns across his front have a green light. They have no need to turn their heads to their left side to check their cross traffic. As they begin their right turn coming toward the blind traveler, he is in their direct line of sight with the right of way. One of the real concerns in street crossings is the car making the right-hand turn, especially when they are facing a red light. These drivers slow or stop quickly and look to their left to try to make their right turn before the traffic surge blocks their way. The traveler has to listen to the car sounds in his near lane, have the cane clearly visible, and move the cane in a clear and deliberate move from the curb. Before the parallel surge crosses his shoulder, he must be aware of cars making their right turns before that surge blocks their way. These are predictable, repetitious, and regular patterns. The unexpected can always happen, and the student must learn to listen for them. But he must also learn how one traffic surge can shield him from another. He must learn to move within the areas of safety, which are part of the patterns. The counterclockwise crossing has a lot of advantages. The student can go with the parallel surge on his left side as soon as it leaves. This gives more time for his crossing. As he nears the opposite curb, he has the parallel traffic on his left as a guide to line of direction, and the engines of the cars at the stop bar on his right to guide him to the corner. Any cars waiting to make a right turn on that far corner are looking to their left for a break in their cross traffic to let them enter the intersection. So a pedestrian making the crossing does so in their direct line of sight. Sometimes there's very little parallel traffic in the near lane. The cars on the right side at the stop bar provide valuable sound cues to guide the blind pedestrian to the opposite curb. A definite clearing motion with the cane, highly visible to motorists, indicates that the blind traveler has begun his crossing. The cane arc may be slightly wider and higher to maximize its visibility to motorists. All this is taught to the student with the instructor's hands on the cane. When the pedestrian makes a determined clearing move and maintains a consistent rate of walking speed, a driver making a right turn can gauge when to turn behind him. Students have to experience a variety of what-ifs. Cars often venture over the stop bar and don't make it through the left turn cycle. They often remain ahead of the line. Some drivers are simply careless. The student has to learn to maintain his orientation and regain his line of direction to the corner. The student may use a slide technique during the crossing, where the cane is in constant contact with the ground to feel the grade changes and the drainage slants that lead to the corner. The sweeping motion of the cane on the curb before the student steps up onto the corner indicates if there are holes, poles, or obstacles in his way. The student is using the sound of his parallel traffic to maintain his line of direction. Some sidewalks and crossings are set in at an angle, and the student may miss the corner and veer into the street. He has to develop a feeling for relative distance and a sense of where corners should be. Changing cane hands may give a bit more reach to find the corner when it's inset.
You know, the street comes here, and then the curb goes out. So you would be expected to cross here, but you got this thing here. And the corner's out here, so this is a natural place where, because the corner is cut like that, you'd expect that you'd have to turn in. So it's a natural cut. And it's one that pretty obvious.
An intersection is a very complex set of users, drivers and cars and pedestrians, and the idea is to have some kind of orderly flow through there so that the fewest number of them run into each other as possible. Well, I think a lot of the factors that make it work well in Tucson have to do with the fact that the city is structured well. The city and the planners and the engineers that work here and the politicians have all worked together in an effort to provide a system that is effective, where you can move fairly large numbers of cars without substantial problems. Much of that has to do with spacing of signals and speed limits, what kind of operation that we have, and the fact that we have an actively managed computer system.
It's a strong confidence builder to know that there's an underlying system of structure and control to something as complex as light-controlled intersections. The patterns are planned and predictable and devised to balance solutions for the competing needs of traffic flow and pedestrian convenience and safety. When a mobility student is able to learn about centralized planning and computerized control, it can build a deeper dimension of understanding and confidence. It's an opportunity as well to voice the needs of blind travelers to those who may be able to take those needs under more careful consideration.
They cross your shoulder, then you go, okay? Now, the problem is that sometimes you have about 4 seconds before...
A model intersection can enable a blind student to get an idea of a whole intersection and its interrelated patterns of movement. It can be a way to set up what-if situations and show the student solutions to problems that he may encounter in the streets as a set of auditory cues. Using his fingers to do the walking can show the student why maintaining a uniform rate of speed on his way to the curb can let oncoming cars continue into their turns by judging the blind traveler's relative speed and distance. The model can be used to show the reasons why a student would be better to stop midway on a clockwise crossing. The cars coming from behind making left turns against the student's parallel traffic are difficult auditory signals to discriminate in the midst of several competing auditory cues. It's safer, when in doubt, to wait. Credentialed orientation and mobility teachers undergo graduate-level instruction in their craft. They spend hundreds of hours under blindfolds, learning the auditory skills and cane techniques they will later pass on to their students. But over the years following their training, there may be little opportunity to practice those hard-won skills. The finely tuned auditory and tactile skills and the subtlety of techniques may change more into a set of visual cues and the memory of experience. The auditory discrimination skills required to cross a major intersection at peak traffic are so complex and so subtle that a teacher engaged in teaching these skills must be able to make those fine distinctions and call them to the student's attention. It's a real confidence builder for the student to know that his teacher would not ask him to do any task that he wouldn't do himself. A successful crossing of a busy intersection at rush hour is a bond between teacher and student. And when a teacher is willing to do this for his students, word travels fast. It looks dangerous, it sometimes looks impossible, but there are areas of safety within the patterns, shields that protect the blind traveler from traffic from certain directions while he completes his crossing. There's an integration of sensory skills, timing, and techniques, and yet all of them rely upon learning sets of increasingly more complex skills. Above all, there is common sense, and that confidence that comes from experiencing success in gradually more challenging situations. Just as the cane touches the sidewalk, mobility is the touch also of the teacher and the student, touching as much with attitudes of expectation as with a guiding hand. Learning to cross the intersection, learning who it was that was responsible for making it work. Many people crossed this student's path. Many specialists brought their own touch to his understanding. Mobility gives a blind traveler the opportunity to reach out, to contact people, to find his own unique path, and to touch the world in his own way.